For the past half a century, an ancient army of warriors has been quietly conquering the world. Wherever small battalions of China's famous Terracotta warriors are exhibited, they win over a new legion of fans.
That was really fascinating part of my archaeological career.
For centuries, they stood guard in silence, watching, waiting, and buried with the secrets of an emperor who demanded loyalty even in death.
Look at the scale of this place. Tells you a lot about the guy.
We knew very little about the Qin Empire until the Terracotta army was uncovered.
In 1974, their discovery stunned the world.
We found amazing archaeological objects.
And the implications are enormous for archaeology. It's going to be truly revolutionary.
But in 2025, something far more disturbing happened. Artificial intelligence was unleashed on the tomb, scanning where no human hand had ever dared to dig. What it uncovered shattered every assumption about the Qin Dynasty and the emperor who built this underground empire. The discovery that changed China forever. In the spring of 1974, the Chinese village of Xi'an faced a simple problem. They needed water. A group of farmers began digging a well in the dry soil, expecting only dirt and stone. Instead, their shovels struck something hard and strange. At first it looked like worthless junk, fragments of clay, shattered limbs, and pieces of what seemed like broken pottery. Mixed in were bronze arrowheads and bricks unlike anything they had seen before. What could these fragments possibly be doing so far underground in a farming village? The villagers didn't think much of it. Some of the pieces were carted off and used in practical ways. A few were sold for pennies in the marketplace. One villager is even said to have used a clay fragment as a pillow. To them, these discoveries were odd, but meaningless. They had no idea that their well digging had pierced the edge of one of the most important archaeological finds in human history.
Feeling he's discovered something important, Yang takes it back to the village, but everyone is terrified to touch it.
The turning point came when a local cultural official, Zhao Kangman, was called in to inspect the strange remains. Zhao immediately recognized their potential significance. He saw not broken pottery, but evidence of an ancient world waiting to be uncovered. His report to higher authorities triggered what would soon become one of the largest government-led excavations in history. When systematic digging began, the scale of the site stunned everyone involved. What they revealed was not a few scattered artifacts, but thousands of life-size terracotta warriors standing in precise military formation.
One by one, these large terracotta warrior statues are unearthed.
Alongside the terracotta warriors were real horses, wooden chariots, and bronze weapons. They were buried together and sealed in silence for over 2,000 years. These figures weren't abstract or generic. Each soldier had distinctive facial features, hairstyles, and uniforms, as if modeled on real men. Rows upon rows of infantry, archers, and cavalry filled the pits like a ghostly army. Historians soon confirmed what had been uncovered. These were funerary guardians built for Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China.
He started modestly, as a boy king, over 2,000 years ago, in 246 BC.
His reign marked a turning point in Chinese history, but his ambitions extended far beyond his lifetime. Obsessed with power in the afterlife, he demanded a protective force to accompany him into death. The Terracotta Army was the result. Pit 1 alone revealed over 7,000 soldiers spread across 20,000 square meters, a formation larger than many real armies of the time. The craftsmanship was staggering. From the tread of their shoes to the folds of their armor, every detail was deliberate. For archaeologists, it was both a marvel and a horror. The scale of the work was breathtaking, but what did it take to build something of this magnitude? The truth is grim. Historical records and later studies suggest that hundreds of thousands of laborers were conscripted to build the tomb complex and its army. Families were torn apart as peasants. Artisans and prisoners were forced into decades of labor. The project lasted more than 38 years and was kept secret under penalty of death. For those who built it, there was no glory. There was only exhaustion, fear, and in many cases, the loss of their own lives. The tomb that ate its own builders. Archaeological excavations around the mausoleum have uncovered human remains buried beneath walls and corridors, with no signs of combat or formal burial. Scholars widely agree these were not ceremonial interments, but evidence of mass executions. Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with secrecy and feared betrayal. Thousands of laborers knew the tomb's hidden passages, traps, and treasure locations. To ensure silence, the emperor ordered their deaths. In 2025, an advanced AI scan revealed sealed rooms filled with human remains never documented before. These weren't elite guards or royal attendants. They were workers, entombed alive. What the scan uncovered confirmed a brutal truth. The mausoleum wasn't just a monument to Qin's legacy, it was a crime scene. Now, in 2025, a revolutionary AI scan has uncovered sealed regions of the tomb that have never been explored. Areas that may finally confirm just how far the emperor went to keep his secrets buried. What lies inside has already begun to change how we understand this terrifying ancient ruler. This brutality mirrors the emperor's wider treatment of his people. During his reign, he conscripted hundreds of thousands into forced labor to build his empire's infrastructure. Entire families were uprooted, peasants were chained into work gangs, and prisoners were sent to construction projects with no expectation of survival. The Great Wall was also one of Qin Shi Huang's most massive undertakings, built to defend his newly unified empire. Historical records state that hundreds of thousands of laborers, many of them conscripted peasants and prisoners, died during its construction. According to reports, their bodies were often buried within the wall itself, turning a defensive structure into a mass grave sealed in stone. Whether or not that is literally true, the image captures how little human cost mattered to Qin. His cruelty extended beyond labor. One of the most infamous events of his reign was the burning of books and the burying alive of scholars. When intellectuals opposed his policies, he ordered texts destroyed and hundreds of scholars executed by burial. Knowledge itself was treated as a threat, and human lives were expendable in suppressing it. If Qin Shi Huang could silence the intellectual class with such violence, why would he hesitate to silence ordinary workers who knew too much about his tomb? The emperor's paranoia only intensified as he aged. Convinced that death was stalking him, he became obsessed with finding immortality. Expeditions were sent across the seas to search for elixirs of life. Alchemists and physicians promised him remedies. When their cures failed, they often paid with their lives. He killed those who disappointed him. He punished those who brought him bad news. His court was built on fear, and survival depended on silence. Seen in this context, the entombment of workers in his mausoleum is not a shocking exception, but a logical outcome of his rule. The bones found near collapsed corridors and sealed chambers tell a story consistent with everything else we know about him. He valued secrecy more than human lives. He demanded loyalty, even to the point of death. The tomb was not just built by his subjects, it consumed them. The discovery of these remains raises a darker question. What else did Qin Shi Huang bury in his empire that demanded such ruthless silence? The empire beneath the earth. When archaeologists first began to study the vast complex of Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum, they quickly realized it was not a simple burial site. It was an underground reconstruction of his empire. The layout of the mausoleum mirrored the Qin capital of Xianyang, with outer walls, inner walls, and carefully organized divisions that reflected the structure of the living city above. Inside the walls, researchers identified terracotta figures that were not just soldiers but officials. These clay administrators, advisors, and courtiers stood in orderly positions, much like a functioning bureaucracy. Just as Qin had demanded total obedience during his lifetime, he built a bureaucracy of clay to carry out his rule in the afterlife. Further from the center, archaeologists discovered figures of entertainers and musicians. Dancers, acrobats, and performers had been recreated in clay, as though ceremonies and festivals would continue for eternity. Nearby were bronze carriages and grooms with horses, waiting for orders. The detail was meticulous. Saddles, bridles, and reins were sculpted with the same precision as real equipment. These touches show the emperor's determination to transport not just power, but culture and daily life into death. Other finds confirmed the scale of this vision. Bronze cranes, ducks, and intricate waterfowl were arranged to replicate imperial parks and gardens. Qin demanded beauty, as well as strength in his afterlife kingdom. Even a full suit of stone armor was unearthed. Too rigid for any human to wear, but perfect for a spirit. It was an unmistakable sign that these objects were not symbolic decorations, but tools meant for use in another realm. Why build all of this? Qin Shi Huang believed he could rule after death just as he had in life. The emperor's obsession with order, bureaucracy, and permanence shaped every corner of the tomb. He expected his control to continue without interruption, even if he was no longer alive. This explains why China has never fully excavated the central chamber of the mausoleum. The sheer size of the site makes excavation dangerous, but there is another reason. Historical records, including Sima Qian's account, describe rivers of liquid mercury flowing through the tomb to simulate waterways.
Flowed quicksilver, liquid mercury forever.
Modern soil testing has confirmed unusually high levels of mercury around the mound. Opening the chamber could release toxic air and destroy fragile relics instantly. Officials fear that any attempt to dig too deeply would irreversibly damage the site. For decades, the tomb has remained sealed, its full contents unknown. This is why AI technology became so significant in 2025. For the first time, scanning could reveal the tomb's deeper structure without touching a single brick. The results were shocking. But before this unexpected revelation, different theories came up that tried to explain the Terracotta Army's real purpose. What is the Terracotta Army really for? One of the darkest theories argues that the Terracotta Army was never meant to protect Qin Shi Huang. It was built as a weapon. Ancient texts hint at the emperor's belief in a war that would follow death, not against rival kings or rebel states, but against forces that were not human at all. Some researchers suggest he prepared for a cosmic battle, a war fought between his soul and powers he believed waited beyond the grave. If this theory is correct, then the 8,000 warriors in their pits were not silent guardians. They were soldiers waiting to be unleashed in a conflict outside the human world. Other theories are stranger still. Fringe scholars have pointed out how deeply Qin's dynasty relied on mysticism and ritual to legitimize power.
Qin Shi Huang is literally the first emperor in China.
According to these views, the statues were not only soldiers but ritual tools. They could be used to control spirits, or perhaps even manipulate the passage of time. To us, the idea seems impossible, but for Qin, ritual was a tool of control. If sacrifices and ceremonies could extend life, bind loyalty, or alter fate, then constructing a vast army of clay effigies might have been seen as a way to bend destiny itself. Chinese folklore adds an even more disturbing layer. Legends speak of warriors frozen in time, waiting for the moment they will be reawakened. Applied to the Terracotta Army, these stories suggest the statues were not built to stand still forever. They were meant to wait for a command, ready to rise again when the emperor or the forces he served demanded it. The thought of thousands of soldiers, archers with real arrowheads, cavalry with sculpted horses, infantry with weapons once sharpened for killing, standing silently in the dark for 2,000 years, only to awaken, is terrifying even as a legend. Inside these walls, clay officials and administrators were positioned as though still waiting for orders. Their presence raises disturbing questions. Why would an emperor need bureaucrats underground unless he truly believed his empire would continue after his death? For centuries, these theories remained speculation. But in 2025, artificial intelligence was used to scan the site in detail. The results revealed something even worse than anyone had imagined. AI unlocks the tomb. The 2025 digital scan that changed everything. In 2025, a joint team set up a non-invasive survey across the mausoleum. They used LiDAR to sweep the surface and shallow subsurface with laser pulses and used ground-penetrating radar to send radio waves into the earth. Drones mapped the mound and the pits from above. Carts and handheld units ran tight grids at ground level. The goal was to build a full 3D model without moving a single brick.
Now that we've got these 3D models, we can start comparing them. I mean, effectively, the sky's the limit.
The raw scans produced huge point clouds and radar slices. On their own, these images were hard to read. The team fed every layer into an AI pipeline trained to recognize repeating layouts, hidden voids, and human-made geometry. The system stitched LiDAR and radar into a single volumetric map. It segmented soil, masonry, backfill, and voids. It flagged anomalies by shape, density, and symmetry. For the first time, scientists could see the underground complex as one continuous structure. Corridors, alcoves, and pits appeared as a single plan. That is when the pattern emerged. The warriors were not scattered by convenience. The AI detected a repeating geometry across pits and corridors, rings, diagonals, and radial lines that connected units of soldiers in a fixed arrangement. The layout was mathematically precise. It was not accidental. To check the pattern, researchers ran a second step. They compared the geometry against a reference set of fortification plans, ritual diagrams, and known religious symbols. The closest match came from Taoist ritual manuals that show protective sigils used to bind or repel spirits. The alignment score was high enough to rule out chance. The formation the soldiers created was not just military order, it was a sigil. The model then highlighted the exact center of this geometry. Under overlapping corridors, it marked a sealed void no excavation had reached. Follow-up scans confirmed a chamber with sharp boundaries and unusual signal behavior.
Originally 115 meters tall. Buried deep underground was a huge chamber.
Radar pulses weakened and scattered at its shell. Thermal readings refused to stabilize over the same spot. Magnetometry showed a clean spike around the chamber's perimeter. The best explanation was a lining made with magnetic or iron-rich material designed to mask what was inside. In plain terms, the chamber was built to hide. Orientation checks made the result even harder to dismiss. When the team overlaid the 3D model with sky maps from the Qin era, the chamber's long axis lined up with the North Star. The corridors that shaped the outer rings tracked known astronomic bearings used in early imperial planning. The alignment was too exact to be luck. Someone had planned the chamber and the army's placement with the heavens in mind. The team asked the AI to test functional readings of the plan. It simulated two possibilities: a defensive perimeter facing outward and a restraint facing inward. The best fit was not a wall against intruders. It was a grid that converged on the center. The soldiers, chariots, and archers formed lines that pointed inward. The model labeled it a containment array. The scans had shown enough to raise questions that no one wanted to answer. Piece by piece, the evidence pointed towards something far darker than a tomb. When researchers began to test the formation as a system rather than as a burial site, the outcome was deeply terrifying. But before they could fully process what it meant, the AI revealed something else. In the very center of the array, standing near the hidden chamber, it detected a single figure unlike any of the others. Larger, heavier, and sealed apart, this solitary statue sent chills down the team's spine. The mysterious figure inside the tomb. Near the hidden central chamber, the system detected a sealed alcove that had gone unrecognized for decades. Traditional excavation methods had never reached this point, and earlier radar surveys were too rough to pick up the fine details. Only by combining LiDAR, ground-penetrating radar, magnetometry, and thermal imaging into one dense 3D reconstruction did the anomaly appear. Inside the alcove stood a single terracotta figure. It was larger than standard soldiers, with armor that seemed heavier and more complex than the rest.
The terracotta army around it has been found. The terracotta army was buried around its edges, not in the pyramid itself.
Unlike other statues, which carry clear rank marks or unit insignias, this one bore none. It stood in deliberate isolation, turned toward the inner passages rather than facing outward with the army. From the surface, no one would have known it was there. Its placement was hidden by layers of soil and surrounding corridors. No records mention this statue. The Shiji, Records of the Grand Historian, describes the emperor's tomb and mentions rivers of mercury, but it makes no reference to a lone figure in the heart of the mausoleum. Later dynastic accounts are equally silent. For archaeologists, this absence is striking. If the figure had symbolic or ceremonial importance, why is it absent from every known text? This silence has fueled debate. Some experts argue that the statue represents a general who once saved Qin Shi Huang from assassination. Placing him in a sealed chamber would have been a way to immortalize loyalty, ensuring he stood guard in death as he had in life. Yet others find the evidence too strange to support this reading. Why would the emperor's most loyal defender be buried without a name or honor? Why seal him away where no one would ever see him? Another interpretation turns to spiritual practice. In Chinese belief, effigies could be used to house or direct spirits. If that is the case, this figure may have been positioned not to lead troops, but to serve as a spiritual sentinel. Its direction toward the chamber suggests watchfulness. The question is whether it was placed to guard the emperor or to guard against him. That uncertainty is what makes the find so unsettling. The AI model also showed irregularities on the statue's surface. Small deviations in texture suggest it may have been altered after its first construction. If true, it would mean the statue was revisited years later, possibly even recarved. Some scholars speculate that Qin himself may have ordered changes as his paranoia grew. Others suggest officials after his death modified the figure as part of a larger plan. Either scenario points to unease, secrecy, and fear. Geophysical readings inside the alcove also showed anomalies. The signals were consistent with ash or burned material, suggesting that a fire ritual may have taken place before the space was sealed. The purpose is unknown. It may have been a dedication rite or a ceremony meant to lock the statue's role permanently as a guardian figure. Whatever the intention, it indicates this statue was not just another soldier. It was the product of special treatment, set apart from the rest. And if one figure was positioned this way, what does that say about the purpose of the entire army? The trap beneath China, what the formation really means. When the AI results were finally laid side by side, the picture was clearer than anyone wanted it to be. The terracotta army was not arranged as a guard line. It was a closed system designed to contain the emperor himself.
The excavation of the Terracotta Army and Mausoleum changed everything we know about ancient China.
The soldiers' positioning, the hidden central chamber, the solitary figure in its own alcove, and the poisonous rivers of mercury all pointed to the same conclusion. This was not a monument of honor, but a prison built underground. The implications were horrifying. Near the end of his life, Qin Shi Huang declared himself the Son of Heaven, claiming divine authority over all under heaven. This gave him not just political power, but religious authority. At court, religious ceremonies and rituals were no longer just traditions. They were used to show loyalty to the emperor and confirm his power over the entire world. Officials and priests were required to perform these rituals correctly, or they could be punished. The purpose of these rituals was to make everyone accept that the emperor's rule was part of the natural and divine order. If his advisors believed that his spirit, driven by paranoia and reckless power, might continue after death, the tomb's role becomes more disturbing. They may have built the Terracotta Army not as a gift, but as chains. It may have been a way to keep his influence sealed underground.
Created to guard China's first emperor, the Terracotta Warriors marked one of the most significant archaeological finds of all time.
Two main theories now dominate the debate. The first is that Qin himself ordered the design, convinced the army and the tomb's strange alignments would defend him in the afterlife. In this version, his paranoia and obsession with control blinded him to the possibility that his priests shaped the system differently than he imagined. The second theory is darker. It suggests his advisors, terrified by his growing instability, made the tomb into a ritual trap without his full knowledge. They may have told him it was for protection, while in truth it was to prevent him from ever rising again. Every piece of evidence fits this prison theory. The weapons were real, sharpened, and placed to point inward. The mercury channels formed a deadly moat that no spirit could cross. The isolated statue near the chamber could have been the spiritual sentinel, set to watch him eternally. None of this would be necessary if the army's purpose was honor or tribute. It only makes sense if there was fear of Qin Shi Huang's soul breaking free. This discovery turned awe into dread. What people thought was the emperor's eternal honor may instead be his eternal cage, meant to lock down a man who had become too dangerous to release, even in death. And if that cage ever fails, the world will face the very thing his own people tried to bury forever. What happens if it opens? If the seal fails, ancient Chinese belief warns of something called restored breath. This meant that a soul once bound could return, reanimated, but no longer human. Texts describe such spirits as cursed and uncontrollable, spreading illness, violence, and misfortune wherever they appeared. To the people of Qin's time, this was not a story. It was a real danger that demanded extreme precautions. Modern scientists do not accept these beliefs, yet they cannot ignore the scale of measures taken inside the tomb. Even if explained as ritual or symbolism, the sheer effort suggests that those who built it feared something beyond ordinary death. The fact that priests, engineers, and laborers risked their lives to finish such a system means they believed release would be catastrophic. Today, the tomb remains sealed. Officials have resisted opening it because of the risk of collapse, contamination, and the unknown effects of the mercury. But the AI models add a new layer of fear. If the formation was designed to hold Qin's spirit in place, then tampering with it could undo the only barrier meant to contain him. Whether myth or not, that possibility lingers. What happens if the chamber is opened? Do we uncover priceless history, or do we break a seal never meant to be broken? For scientists, the question is technical. For those who see the tomb as a spiritual prison, the answer is simple. Some rulers were never meant to rise again. What do you think about these AI findings? Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.